Sometimes the smallest gestures reveal the deepest strength. In a busy restaurant, a shy black waitress thought she was invisible, until she greeted a woman in silence. With just her hands, she spoke a language of compassion that turned an ordinary night into a story the whole city would remember. The restaurant was bustling with the Friday evening crowd, the kind of crowd where men in polished shoes and women in glittering dresses laughed a little too loudly, where the sound of forks against plates was drowned by chatter and the faint music playing in the background. Amid this, Amara moved quietly from table to table, her black apron tied neatly around her waist, her curly hair pinned back in a bun that always seemed to come loose by the end of her shift. She was a waitress, just one of many in the large upscale restaurant, but unlike others who charmed customers with bright smiles and easy small talk, Amara was quiet, reserved, almost timid. She preferred to stay unnoticed, moving gracefully but silently, her voice soft when she had to use it, her smile shy when she caught anyone's eye. She was new here, only 3 weeks into the job, still learning the rhythm of rushing orders and the art of balancing 3 plates at once. Most of the regulars hardly noticed her, except for the occasional rude comment about her being too slow, or too quiet, and she was used to blending into the background. But Amara had her reasons for being quiet. Words were not her strongest gift. She had grown up in a neighborhood where noise was constant, sirens at night, shouting on the streets, the chaos of too many people trying to survive. Silence had been her escape, her way of coping, and in that silence, she had discovered something powerful, the language of hands, of expressions, of signs. It was something she had picked up almost by accident. An elderly neighbor had been deaf, and young Amara, curious and empathetic, had learned to communicate with him. Over the years, she had practiced more, taught herself sign language through library books and online videos, and found comfort in the way silence could still speak volumes. Tonight, though, it didn't seem like a skill she would ever need in a restaurant like this. Tonight was just another night of serving tables, avoiding attention, and quietly watching the glittering lives of those who seemed to belong in a world far richer than hers. But everything changed when a tall, well-dressed man walked in, guiding an older woman by the hand. He was clearly wealthy, his suit alone looked like it cost more than Amara made in a month, and people in the restaurant immediately began whispering, recognizing him. He was Julian Carter, the billionaire entrepreneur, known for his investments, his charities, his commanding presence in every business magazine. But it wasn't him who caught Amara's eye, it was the woman beside him, his mother. She was elegant, dressed in soft pastels, her silver hair tied in a neat bun, her smile gentle yet reserved. But there was something different about her. As she settled into her chair, Amara noticed she didn't respond to the waiter's words. She looked instead at her son's lips, carefully following the shape of his words, nodding softly as if piecing meaning together. Amara froze. She knew that look. She knew it from her neighbor years ago, from the way deaf people searched for clues in a noisy world that never slowed down for them. Without realizing, Amara found herself stepping forward, her heart pounding. She hesitated, unsure if she should do it. After all, who was she? Just a shy waitress. But when the woman looked up at her, Amara made a choice that would change everything. She didn't speak, she signed. With careful hands, Amara greeted her, "Good evening. Welcome." The moment her hands moved, silence seemed to ripple across the table, then across the room as Julian stopped mid-sentence, blinking in surprise, and his mother's eyes widened with something that looked like astonishment and joy all at once. Amara's fingers trembled slightly, her shy nature making her second-guess herself, but when Julian's mother leaned forward, a smile spreading across her face as she signed back with ease, Amara felt a warmth bloom in her chest that gave her courage. For the first time in the restaurant, she wasn't invisible. She was seen, not as just another waitress, not as a quiet girl serving plates, but as someone who had reached into another person's silent world and spoken. "You sign." Julian's mother signed, her eyes sparkling as though she had just found a long-lost friend. Amara nodded shyly, her hands moving with hesitance. "I learned a little," but in truth, her signing was fluent, smooth, practiced over years of quiet evenings and whispered self-teachings. The woman chuckled softly, turning to her son, her hands flying as she signed excitedly. "She knows sign language. Can you believe it? She greeted me in my own language." Julian, who had been staring as though he had stepped into an entirely new reality, leaned back in his chair, his sharp businessman's demeanor giving way to something softer. He was used to people trying to impress him, with words, with flattery, with desperate attempts to win his attention. But here was this young waitress, shy and quiet, who hadn't even spoken to him, yet she had managed to impress the one person he loved most in the world, his mother. Around them, other diners had started to notice too. Conversations lowered, eyes turned, whispers rose. Is she signing? Look at that waitress with Mrs. Carter. I didn't know she was deaf. It was a small moment, but it had shifted the entire atmosphere of the restaurant. Where once Amara had blended into the background, she was now the center of quiet awe. And though it scared her, her hands trembling as she brought menus and took orders in sign language, it also filled her with a strange, unfamiliar pride. For once, she wasn't trying to hide. She was simply being herself, and that was enough. As she moved back and forth from the table, Julian kept watching her, his sharp eyes narrowing as though he was studying something more than just her actions. It wasn't attraction in the usual sense, though Amara was beautiful in her own subtle, unpolished way. It was admiration, respect, curiosity, because here was a woman who, without knowing it, had just given his mother the gift of comfort and dignity in a place where she usually felt excluded. And for Julian, that was priceless. What Amara didn't know was that this small act, this simple greeting in sign language, would ripple far beyond this one night, far beyond this restaurant. It would open doors she never thought possible, and it would challenge not only how others saw her, but how she saw herself. Dinner unfolded in a way Amara had never experienced. Usually, serving a billionaire's table came with tension, the need to be perfect, the fear of making mistakes that could cost her the job. But with Julian's mother, it was different. The older woman laughed softly when Amara signed a playful comment about the size of the dessert portions, her eyes lighting up with delight. She asked Amara about herself, where she had learned sign language, if she had family nearby. And Amara, though still shy, found herself opening up in a way she rarely did. She shared bits of her story, how she had grown up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, how she had dreamed once of becoming a teacher but life had forced her into jobs like this, how sign language had been her secret passion. Julian listened quietly, translating parts for others at the table when needed, but mostly watching the connection unfold between his mother and this waitress. He hadn't seen his mother this animated in years. She had always been strong, dignified, but he knew the isolation her deafness sometimes caused her. Tonight, that isolation had been broken, by this young woman who had no idea the impact she was making. At one point, when Amara excused herself to get another order, Julian leaned toward his mother and asked softly, "What do you think of her?" His mother's reply was simple, signed with conviction, "She is rare. People like her, are rare." Later that evening, as Amara cleared plates, Julian finally spoke directly to her, his tone softer than the usual commanding voice he was known for. "You surprised me tonight," he said. Amara blinked, unsure how to respond, her instinct being to shrink back. I just wanted to make her feel welcome," she murmured. Julian's eyes softened. Most people don't think about that. Most people wouldn't even try. But you did. For Amara, it was almost overwhelming. She wasn't used to praise, certainly not from someone like him. She had always been told she was too quiet, too reserved, not enough. Yet here she was, being told she was more than enough, simply for being herself. That night, when the Carters left the restaurant, Julian's mother hugged Amara tightly, signing, "Thank you," with tears in her eyes. And Julian gave her a look that seemed to promise this wasn't the last time their paths would cross. Amara thought that would be the end of it. Just a fleeting moment in her otherwise ordinary life. But the next morning, when she arrived at the restaurant, whispers were already spreading. Someone had taken a video, a short clip of Amara greeting Mrs. Carter in sign language, the older woman's delighted reaction, the quiet magic of that moment. Overnight, it had gone viral. Shy waitress speaks billionaire's mother's language. Kindness in silence, a waitress shocks a billionaire family. By noon, the video had millions of views. Customers started pouring into the restaurant, asking for the signing waitress. Journalists called. Social media flooded with praise. And then, just when it felt like too much for Amara to handle, Julian Carter himself walked into the restaurant. He wasn't there as a customer this time. He was there for her. He asked to speak with her privately, and though her heart raced, Amara followed him. In his usual direct way, Julian said, "I don't want this to be just a viral story. You have a gift, and I think the world needs more of it." He explained that he wanted to fund a program, free sign language classes for communities, interpreters for public spaces, awareness campaigns. And he wanted Amara to lead it. She was speechless, her hands trembling as tears filled her eyes. Me, she whispered. Julian nodded. Yes, you. The woman who had the courage to make my mother feel seen when no one else bothered. It was overwhelming, but in that moment, Amara felt something she had never felt before, belonging. She wasn't just the shy waitress anymore. She was a bridge between worlds, a voice for those who lived in silence, a symbol of kindness that spoke louder than words ever could. And as she stood there, watching her life change in ways she never imagined, she realized something powerful, that sometimes, the smallest acts, the quietest gestures, could echo louder than anything else. Kindness doesn't always need a voice, sometimes, it only needs a heart willing to speak in silence. Amara's hands changed a billionaire's world, and maybe today, your small act can change someone's life too. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Vibes, where every story reminds us that love and kindness are the true languages of humanity.